Hey guys, welcome to Mythical Entertainment eSports discussion with myself, Solequincy, and my co-host Scarlett. Today we'll be covering the group stages on MSI. Alright, for day one, RNG versus CLG, China's best team versus NA's best team.
Talk about
That
an
game,
explicit way to start the tournament,
yeah,
right?
exactly. That day one was obviously you need to cast said it. Welcome to MSI. Up to what was it? That game was honestly pretty one-sided. From
I wouldn't
actually
say
no,
necessarily totally
at
one-sided.
the beginning,
Yeah.
the beginning was pretty one-sided from China's side. They were just dominating, and COG took that back with the macro game.
Hmm.
And up until the point, it was back and forth. Up into that misplay from Darshan not pressing RM Markout and engaging and getting blown up.
And then losing it. I mean, yeah, definitely, RNG had the upper hand the entire match. You know, they were definitely trading blows for blows on this one, but you could tell RNG had that edge over them. And what kills me, watching this game is just you're like, oh man, their team fights are so good. They're totally outplaying CLG in team fights. And they ironically lost their match because of a malfunction in their team fight. It was just sad to watch.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, that game, Dixie was a monster. I'm trying not to. That kid, coming straight from the challenger scene, straight into this game, fresh, just fresh talent coming in, showing, hungry for hungry for wins. He's just showing up big time. He almost got a pentakill around like the 1 hour, like 5 minutes, I think.
Yeah, about there. I mean, that's the thing about new blood in the water. Is just they're hungry. You know, especially coming out of the challenger scene, you got something to prove. You want to prove it. You want to do it right. I mean,
Speaking of that, moving on to a different, game to another one, straight from the challenger scene, G2 eSports or G2 versus Flash Robes. That game, this is Europe's best. G2 underperformed this game, honestly, and
talk about aggressive, right?
yeah, and these guys are coming also straight from the challenger scene.
I mean,
this is
I don't know. Don't get me wrong. G2 definitely were the kids with something to prove, but I feel like the kids with something to prove went in with guns blazing, probably a little too hot. They just weren't thinking in their matches. It was just harder, faster, push, push, push.
And Flash was capitalized off that big time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then following up with SKT versus the two-time world reigning champions versus I think what was it? How do you pronounce that? The Wildcard Dreams. I'll just use the abbreviation SUP. That was honestly a stomp, 22-1.
Yeah.
Sadly, that was expected from a lot of people. That's a wildcard region versus the Korean overlords.
Absolutely. I mean, really at that point, you look at the matchup and you're just SKT versus a wild card. Does anybody even really want to watch this? It's a massacre.
It's sad because, and like I said, it was 22-1. That was honestly just stomp.
Yeah.
All right. COG versus Flash Wolves. These guys have history. They played over before in the world stage back at Worlds, and I believe they were 1-1.
Mm-hmm.
And now this time around, COG versus Flash Wolves. This is a good game because it was a close game up until Xfinity secured Fifth Dragon for his team by jumping over the wall and using his ult to stop Dragon from dying. And while Flash was just trying to secure it, stole it, and then afterwards, Huhi and the rest of COG followed up with an amazing team fight that secured him Dragon right afterwards.
Can I just say, who he came to play this tournament, by the way? I mean,
big time.
He definitely came to play for this tournament. I mean, you go back and you look at just overall highlights for this invitational, and who he is in highlight. Yeah, he seriously came to play. This isn't. I really don't think at this point it's that who he's trying to represent NA. For someone who's been playing as hard as he has been, this is more about him. This is him as a player. Yeah.
Because he replaced Full Welter, it sort of sticks replacing Double Lift. Those are big shoes to fill for both ends. And look at them now. They're performing at the world stage, at a world class talent, versus the big teams like Flash Wolves, SKT coming up pretty soon, and then
I mean, not to mention too, let's call it what it is. Double Lift may not be the greatest of NA players,
He was at one
But
point though.
he not as of recently. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
not as of recently has not been the greatest of NA players, but he is definitely an NA favorite. So I wouldn't say he had like massive shoes to fill talent wise, but like proving something to the esports audience because he's taking over a favorite spot, a favorite player. And I think that's probably harder than actually just like performing in a game at that point. You can perform as much as you want, as well as you can, but if the crowd just doesn't respond to you, like it's hard.
That motivation from the crowd to play even more aggressive, or make those aggressive plays really high level plays.
Absolutely.
For the most part. And speaking of performing, SKT versus G2, that was SKT performing again really well against G2. They got 320. It was 323.
Yeah.
And that was again another stomp from SKT, as expected. Honestly.
Yeah, no, definitely that wasn't expected, and like this actually kind of just sets SKT up for, I guess, our biggest disappointment in this tournament, because it's like you see SKT in the first day gun against these small fishes, and you're just like stomp, stomp, stomp.
Yeah, it's like they're gonna take the whole thing over again. It's expected.
Exactly. So you already have this expectation for SKT because they're just stomping around, and it's like, wow, were we little disappointed?
Yeah. All right. Following up from SKT's game, Sub versus RNG. That game, China's best ended the game going, was it 11-26? It was another stomp again. The wildcard region. I mean, they're putting up a lot more fight now this year, but I mean, this is China's best, and their aggressive playstyle just dominated that game. Ugh.
It did, and that's why it came out to be such a huge stomp. I mean, you call it what it is, a stomp's a stomp.
Yep, no going around it. And that about covers up for day 1. Going on to day 2, COG versus G2, the EE versus NA matchup. That was a pretty hyped up match, considering that was day 2, the first match of the day for day 2. How did you feel about that, considering that COG ended up just winning the game?
I don't know. Really, at that point, I think that was probably one of the more even match games that you see throughout the tournament. But also at the same time, like you could see CLG just kind of, I wouldn't say like outplaying, but more outmaneuvering on the map.
They were capitalizing
yeah,
big time off
definitely.
these mistakes. Again, like you mentioned earlier, they were going guns blazing, and COG knows how to play around that.
Yeah, they do. And I think that's just, probably that rookie mistake for G2, like coming straight out of the Challenger Series, where it's just like, you can be overly aggressive in the Challenger Series and actually win just by straight brute force.
But this is the world stage. You can't be doing that at this level.
No, because all of these teams, no one
wins.
the
best of the regions.
Exactly, best of the regions, but also, like, this is what makes world champions. They just don't win by straight brute force, glass cannons, like, how hard can you hit? Like, everyone is a systematic player in each one of these top-level teams. Like, they think, they're aware of maps, wards, where are we going to capitalize? Someone doesn't have a flash. I mean, like, they think about all these extra things, and I just don't think G2 has necessarily worked out this team yet. Yeah.
Following that up to SKT versus RNG, that game went on to 60 long minutes.
Yeah.
That was a long game. That game should have been closed out a long time ago, but SKT hanging on to the very, very just last ruins of their base. That game could have gone both ways though towards the end of the game, because both teams had almost 6 items, or most of them did actually. And usually at around the 60-minute mark, the games are usually decided by one team fight.
Exactly.
And that's what ended up happening by RNG side.
And again, this is just one of those things where, like, SKT, like, I feel like for whatever reason, this tournament, and they're known for this, where, like, they kind of feel out their opponents, but I feel like SKT was feeling out opponents
a little
too long. Yeah, like, but they just weren't committing to making that play happen. Like, they were just skirting around a team fight, waiting way too long for an opportune moment. That's never
and
there.
Usually when that happened, they already got jumped on or engaged on by RNG.
Yeah.
And all right, well, I mean, I'm moving from Flash Wolves to World Supreme, or is it World Supreme?
No, super massive black hole.
Super massive. There we go. Super massive. All right, this honestly was I wouldn't say a stomp, but it was a pretty calculated game from Flash Wolves. They systematically took out like the wildcard region team, Supermassive, and it was just, I want to say it was expected from Flash Wolves, honestly. I was happy that they won, but also, again, it's a wildcard region team, so a lot of the people don't expect them to win at all.
Exactly. They're kind of just there in the tournament for the most part because, it's ornamental.
Let's be honest, though. Yeah, that's the case. But, I mean, They're getting a lot better though, and it's good news for us because it's gonna be a lot more competition overall. But sadly, that doesn't right now. That's not happening.
I just don't think it's there necessarily for their confidence because you watch Supermassive play and you're just like, wow, that's some really smart shit that's happening on the map. You know, like they've got lots of talent. Personally, I actually think Supermassive may actually have a little more than Flash Wolves, but Flash Wolves just edges out for the simple fact, and I like Flash Wolves as a team, but they edge out because they have that experience that Supermassive
They also
lacks.
have a really cool icon, but digressing from that, let's moving on to RNG versus G2. Europe versus China's best. Honestly, this, like we said earlier, G2, yeah, no, G2 was underperforming big time. You can't go guns blazing against China's, not overly aggressive, but calculated, hyper aggressive early game style because that was a stomp. Honestly, if I hadn't seen a stomp, that was a stomp. Honestly,
Yeah.
but different game now. Supermassive versus COG. I'm surprised COG lost this one, considering they were losing honestly for the most part.
Let's
But
call
they
it what
had,
it is, though. This was the sheer freaking luck, almost.
yeah, Supermassive with the Winians.
Yeah.
And they actually ended up acing COG from getting back to the base, and then they just ended up closing the game off that alone. That, as a COG fan, made me pretty salty.
Yeah, I definitely came off of that match a little salty too, because it was just like, seriously, like, we went out that way, like, it wasn't even a good way to go out.
Yeah.
It was just like, seriously?
We went head toe to toe with China's best, and then look what happened versus the wildcard region team. I guess the meme itself that people keep mentioning, wildcard region versus NA, is kind of true now.
Yep.
Sadly, but from that going on to SKT versus Flash Wolves, this is where SKT started to, like you said earlier, they're starting to feeling out their opponents a little too long.
This was like when your world for League and esports kind of just turns upside down, and you have to reevaluate everything you've known the past couple of seasons.
You're now.
Yeah, you're just like, hold on. So Flash Wolves took a game from who? SKT? Are you serious?
And COG just lost to wildcard region. Oh wait, it's expected.
Yeah.
Anyways, but honestly, this is like you said earlier. They start slumping really hard, really, really hard.
I don't know what's happening with SKT, particularly in this tournament. Yeah, they performed well, but there's been enough times during this tournament where you were just like, this is not the SKT
we saw last year.
Yeah, this is not the same SKT. Even like you go back and you watch SKTs, even in regionals, invitationals, mid seasons, whatever, they were a lot better than what they are now.
Yeah, right now. Hopefully they fix what's going on with them, and we can get a way better, series out of them. And that about covers it for day 2, though. Going into day 3, Flash Wolves versus RNG. That China's best obviously was expected to win that game. That was not more of a stomp, but it was pretty one-sided.
Standard.
Yeah. And then following it up with COG versus SKT. That's a pretty big match I wanted to stay up for, but I fell asleep. Wow, that game should have been SKT's, but
yeah,
COG with the macro game, honestly, overall, they had the most towers that game, even when they were down kills. And the Baron team fight that won that game was just phenomenal. It was played on both sides, but COG honestly played that to the best of each of the champions, and it should because they obviously
a lot of stuff went down during that team fight, like a lot of stuff. Mechanically, CLG just kind of dominated it between placing ults and everything else, but it's just I think as
securing the Baron too,
exactly.
And on top of all that, between all that happening, is managed to secure Baron and still ace him after that.
Like insult to injury, like that was a massive insult to injury to SKT. And it just like what's weird is you watch that group fight happen, or you watch that team fight happen, and we've seen SKT scrap their way through, not even scrap, like just systematically demolish worst team fights. You know?
Where things are turning against them and they managed to
come back from it. This was just like you kind of figured SKT would be able to come out of it because like when I first started watching it, you're just like, oh yeah, they'll come back, no big deal, and then all of a sudden they just down. I was like, what happened?
Can I say though? You said earlier that he showed up big time, and he is honestly that is zero that he placed inside the Baron pit, zoned out 2 of the SKT members, and allowed for COG to clean up that team fight so well.
Yeah, that is zero. Just really zoned them appropriately for the rest of CLG to just play at it and clean up. Yeah.
That awesome Mason. I got shivers after that too, considering
it was good.
NA.
Yeah, exactly. Right? You're like NA's got a shot for once.
All right, moving on from that amazing game, Sup versus G2. That I was honestly expecting. I was hoping for Sup to take that game, but honestly, G2 with the guns blazing style.
That's the only time it worked. Is against the wildcard team. I mean,
sadly. Moving on from that game, Flash versus SKT. This is another upset, considering. I mean, not really an upset, but I guess you could say unexpected because they just lost to COG, so anything's possible, I guess.
Right at that point.
And they ended up losing to Flash Wolves, and that was wow.
I know. I mean,
this is the two-time world reigning champions for them to be playing like this at the world stage.
I don't know. So they're pod people at this point. I don't know where SKT is and who replaced them, but this is not,
the SKT
everyone sees. Yeah.
Yeah. I honestly expected them to just take the whole tournament, like single-handedly, like stomp everybody like they did last year at Worlds. But this is a different SKT. I'm honestly a little disappointed with them.
Yep.
Moving on from that, the revenge match, COG versus
Supermassive.
Supermassive. I keep forgetting that name. All right, that I'm glad COG won because that was a lot better game, a lot cleaner game for COG considering what happened last game with the Winians. Yeah.
But at that point, you come off of an SKT win. It's kind of like
that's true. The momentum's just on your side. You're expected to just win anything.
You're expected at that point. You're just like you hit that high for the day and you just ride it out.
Yep. All right. GT versus RNG. That honestly, that was just a very, very one-sided match. Honestly, from RNG, just
it was, and that's just because, like, again, G2 is super aggressive. Go in, pew pew pew. Works against Supermassive, does not work against RNG.
Or more experienced teams that know how to handle that because they know you can't solo queue it. Like that, it honestly feels like to me they're just trying to solo queue this. Like, there's no communication honestly from their end because a lot of the plays that happen, they're capitalized heavily, and I don't know if their teams communicated at all, but it feels like they're just not sharing the information. Like, oh no, TP down or flash down, don't gank bot, whatever. It feels like the whole team just fell apart. Honestly,
exactly. They're all very good by themselves, like in their laning phases. They catch people out. They're super strong, but I feel like that synergy for a team fight, communication wise, it lacks.
It's not there.
It's not there. Yeah.
Should have seen them during the EU split, the spring split. They were playing a lot better than this, and it's kind of sad to see them just fall apart like
this. Which is weird, because it's like, where did that communication go? Because that communication is absolutely key in the higher levels of competition.
All right. That covers up day 3, though. Sadly, I'm a little disappointed with G2. Hopefully, actually, they don't. Do they end up? Or going on from day 3, right before the calm before the storm, going on to day 4 now. That was a very explosive setup of matches, honestly. G2 versus Sup, that was honestly G2 took the game. Like I said earlier, the whole overly aggressive playstyle works against the wildcard teams. From what it's seen right here in at the world stage. Following this up with RNG versus Flash Wolves, that was honestly again a stomp by RNG.
Yeah, which makes me a little sad because like I really do want Flash Wolves to kind of like step it up just a little more, but I'm kind of hoping that being smacked around as much as they have in this tournament, that they'll tactfully like come back better on the Rift.
But put themselves back together because I honestly feel like they have potential, like COG being the underdogs. COG and Flash Wolves at this point being underdogs.
Yeah.
And SKT and RNG being the big dogs. Hopefully we can see the underdogs win, but we'll say that for a different day. SKT versus COG, the highlight, I think, in my opinion, of the day 4 matchups. Honestly, I'm surprised that this game was back and forth. Actually, no, it was very one-sided for SKT for the beginning, up into I believe one of the team fights that happened, and that's when
their Congo line.
Yeah,
it was their Congo line.
One after another.
Which was just like, what were you doing? It's such a like.
They had an amazing ace, remember that, or amazing team fight. They went for the Baron, and as soon as they went for the Baron, SK2 tried to capitalize and cut him off.
Yep.
and COG went for the Congo line to help Xmithy out, and then
it
they
just
all got
fell
caught
one
out.
right after another, and
Yep.
that's how it ended. It was just like, why are we doing this? Like, oh my god.
The gold wasn't all that much of a, the goal difference wasn't all that big, but it just sucks because I know they had the potential to win that game, and they did it before.
And they could have done it, and you clearly see it that this match was going pretty much, I wouldn't say head to head, but like they were hanging in there. And if they would have waited for one of those moments where SKT couldn't commit because they were having a lot of those this tournament, they could have had it.
Let me right there, perfect. At the 45-minute mark, Bradford the Congo line, right? They still had Baron buff on some of the members in COG. They went to go push the bot lane. He and I forgot who else was trying to do some kind of play in the jungle, which is fun because they had Arlon Solo. He has a big AoE stun, but they got kind of caught out. Xmithy and he got caught out. Kindred. Xmithy had to use the ulti early on, and the board up from Aphromu hit Darshan. So a lot of the damage from COG was non-existent for a long time. And SKT just managed to clean the whole team fight up, and
it just got blown. Like they started too early. That was the problem. Like
they should have just kept sieging bot lane and kept the wards on the flank, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then gone for the play afterwards as soon as they got that tower, so they don't have anything to fall back on. But sadly, that should, I honestly feel like that should have been COG's game after that amazing team that they had with the Baron play. But after the Baron play, they got caught out, and they misplayed again once more bot lane, and then that was it for that.
But this also poises right back to, this is the SKT that we're used to seeing. Like, they came back for a systematically dismantling what CLG just did. Like, everything CLG thought they could get away with, SKT came around and just told them, nope, and put baby back in the corner. Like,
well said, considering that Baron call, they got caught out. Congo line, caught out. Bot lane, where that team fight that changed everything, caught out. Completely just...
They got punished for it. They got totally punished for it.
Alright, moving on from that amazing game, sadly, on to Flash Whips to G2. This was honestly another stomp from Flash. Yeah. G2, not that overly aggressive playstyle is not going to work, honestly.
It's not going to. That's it.
Not against the experienced teams, considering Flash Whips has experience on the world stage as well, considering last year they were at, a Worlds. And speaking of, are the members that have world stage... Actually, does COG have any experience on the world stage?
Yes. Early world stage.
Yeah.
Very early world stage. Groups. Yeah.
Groups. COG versus RNG.
Yep.
This is another highlight, in my opinion, right here, day 4. China's best versus NA's best. And this is honestly RNG's game to win. COG was down. Their base was... Inhib was down. Their base was, like, in shambles almost. They had some towers still, but... I don't know what happened. I don't know if RNG is just playing with their food, I guess you could say. But they got caught out
a lot.
Bad.
Yeah.
That one team fight in their base where Aphromu landed snare after snare, and they landed, I don't know, they killed 3 members off of RNG, and they managed to just...
Again, like, this was one of those things, like, I really love seeing RNG in team fights. Like, they're really strong in team fights. All around, I think they're probably one of the best team fighting teams in the tournament. Like, they really do outplay CLG when it comes to that arena. But it just, and this has backfired on them multiple times throughout this tournament. Strong team fights, consistent, like 95% of the time. But they screw up the one team fight that matters, and that's how they lose. Like, that's just their Achilles heel. Like, they don't pay attention to endgame, who's outscaling who, and they want to get too assertive, but they're not paying attention to it.
That assertiveness right there is what cost them the game, because they ended up getting caught multiple times there inside the COG space.
Yeah.
And then with Xmithy denying the 5th dragon, oh my god, he coming over the wall and using injured ult. Woo! Amazing.
Yeah.
That was, and then he actually stole it on top of that, so that denied the, I forget what the 5th dragon buff is called.
I can't remember, like, that's not Tower Destroyer, that's like the 3rd one.
No, it's the one that the burning damage.
Burning,
but he denied it regardless, and then that team fight, because he jumped over the wall, ulti 2 people with the 0 ult into the Dragon Ball, and those 2 members of RNG were useless. COG followed up with a cleanup crew, and then afterwards they were trying to be assertive again, like we mentioned earlier. The jungler from RNG ended up trying to go for a kill for no reason. No business being there.
Like, why are we asserting dominance?
4 members of COG around the corner. He just got knocked, locked down and killed. And then afterwards, COG just cleaned it up. Obviously, the remaining base, and then took the win. With that awkward silence that ensued right afterwards, nobody clapped for them.
No one didn't know what to do. Like, I'm not sure if that was just like people were so disappointed with RNG or just so surprised that COG
to be honest,
took it.
if that was COG in the shoes, if they swapped, sides, if that was COG doing what they did, I would have been pissed too, and I would have been like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, you're just like a mixture of frustration and just surprise. Like I wouldn't say like people are being impolite. It was just more like that crowd was salty. Let's call it like what it is.
Yeah, I would have been salty as hell if my team just, the team representing my nation just ended up
like
a region at the
that.
end.
Also being said, before we wrap up day 4, like NA came to play
Big time.
this tournament, like SKT and RNG, like you just took on the 2 Asian powerhouses.
Yeah, exactly. We never have that kind of luck.
We've never had the positioning to actually take on. I don't know what's happening over in China or Korea for that matter. But
the fact that we're knocking these games off of, some of the best teams of each region,
exactly.
Eastern teams,
or COG of all things too, because like you think about it and you're just like, oh yeah, COG is they're an NA team. They're not exactly the NA team. The NA team would be like C9, but I don't know. It's just great, instead of being C9, who's the
watching these games too.
Yeah, the reverse sweep, the Cinderella stories. This is more just CLG coming into their own, and NA essentially coming into their own, like reaffirming that like we're here to play, we're good.
Watch us. Worst region. We're not worst region right next to Wildcard region as well. All right, that about wraps it up. Well, actually, no, we got one more game actually.
Oh yeah,
Supermassive is SKT. I'm sorry to say it, but
obviously,
that was SKT's game. That was just, another just standard game from SKT, I guess you can call it, to being polite. All right, that guess wraps it up for day 4 then. Going off into day 5, RNG versus Supermassive. That was honestly just, again, another wildcard region team versus China's best. RNG won.
What to expect, yeah.
Yeah, sorry to say it. Moving on from that game, Flash versus COG. Another good match, honestly, in my opinion. COG, honestly, that game was really scrappy because Flash was up kills up into that team fight where they misplayed up in their jungle, and they thought Darshan was leaving because he backed. He recalled in front of them with vision around them, and they engaged.
They came back,
and as soon as they engaged, Darshan ulti back in with Echo, and then bam, the whole team fight
fell apart. I mean, like it happened so quickly too. Like I don't think they realized that he was back in until like some damage was thrown out, and at that point it was already too late. Yeah.
Because they jumped on Stixxay, and then another Kindred ult. Considering that Flash was jungler, used the Kindred ult, and Stixxay was pretty low on HP. He dashed in to the Kindred ult, started hitting some people, healed back up, and the Kindred ult healed him on top of that.
Yep.
I think it heals it.
It does. It doesn't do like a whole lot of heal, but obviously it was enough to keep him in the fight. Yeah.
And after that, it was just they had Baron buff still, so they pushed the bot tower even further down in, and then they just ended up closing the game.
It was just the perfect domino effect.
Yeah.
I mean, they tried. I mean, and you got to give it to Flash Wolves. They tried capitalizing on a back that they, technically they could have won that, like right off of that. They should have.
And the other champion that would have been a 4v5, but it was Echo.
Yep.
And sorry to say, but they ended up losing that, and then
it's just
it was a good game, honestly.
Hindsight's 2020, and they just lost it on that.
Yeah. All right, SKT versus G2. That was G2 again. Just like we said this whole week, they've just been. This isn't the G2 I saw in the EU spring split. This is just.
I just feel like G2's there, and they're kind of happy to play.
They're on vacation.
Yeah. They're like, "Hey guys, we're here. Hi." And yeah.
All right, Supermassive versus Flash Wolves. Flash Wolves ended just.
Flash Wolves had a good invitational. Like, they just had a good tournament. They really did. They showed up. There's a reason why, if you're a Flash Wolves fan, that you reaffirmed why you're a Flash Wolves fan. Like,
I love Sorda. I think he's a really good player, mechanically speaking. From that game, honestly, another G2 game versus CLG, NA versus EU matchup. Most of the time, it's a big thing, happening in the Twitch chat, but not this time around because honestly. It was going a little bit back and forth, a little bit, just a tiny bit, and then COG just got the macro game down a lot better than G2 does.
And they just dominated from there.
Yeah,
Again,
because that team fight, I think it was the last team fight at the end of the game was where G2's Kindred, I think his name's Trick,
yeah,
ended up using the Kindred ult and keeping at least 2-3 members of COG alive. And that turned the team fight all but just in COG's favor, and that was not a good thing at all.
Kindred ulti, like, I don't know, Kindred was very meta this tournament. Like, I think she was almost pretty much in every game.
Yeah, just like Azir as well.
Yeah, Azir. But
you have to be good at the champion you play. You can't just play because, he's OP.
Tons of misplays with that Kindred ulti. Like, I mean, given the fact of what it does, obviously there's going to be misplays, but there's just, I don't know, like, I felt that Kindred ulti that's been set off a couple of different times, someone's got to be banging at their keyboard going, like, why did I do that? Like, yeah.
It's just sloppy, honestly, in my opinion. You don't ulti and keep 2 to 3 members of the enemy team alive just so you can keep yourself alive. You should just let yourself die, let your team clean up, and you would have been fine. But no, that's not what happened.
Like, if you have an itch to really use the freaking ulti, then ult your team. Like, just ult your team if you really want to be useful. Give them a little bit of a health buff and call it like it is. You know, take the hit, die. Don't keep and heal.
But let's say, not to discredit COG, they ended up playing that team fight phenomenal as well because they're the ones who engaged, and then they turn around, honestly. Kudos to COG. I'm glad they're representing NA.
Yeah.
Any other team, they don't have a track record of beating, Korean teams.
Yeah, I was about to say anyone across the pond.
Yeah. All right, moving on to, I think, a hot and good game, RNG versus SKT.
Yep.
I was so happy because
that game was long.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
That game honestly should have been RNG's. That should have been, because they already had a goal for the most part. And the whole Baron dance, SKT played that Baron dance so well because they didn't have vision completely. They run back in the bush with a pink ward in it. RNG would kind of go forward and then back and forth for a good minute or two.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. I mean, there was a ton of dancing in this one, and that's probably why the game lasted as long. Because both teams, even though they're good moving forward and they know it, they
respect each other a little too much.
Exactly. It was just quit filling each other out. You're not making out. Let's just slide into home base here and call it what it is. Let's get down to it.
I mean, somebody tried to hit, try to go for the home run, and that was RNG's ADC, Sivir. He actually used the Sivir ult a little too quick, and SKT immediately completely backed off, and waited. And that was an ult that was pretty. That's an AoE ult that you do not want to be down on Sivir, because that's what Sivir is all about.
Especially for your carry. Let's call it what it is.
And immobile, no dash on that Sivir. She got destroyed that team fight, honestly.
It was very sad to see happen, too, because it was just you could tell because they were waiting on that cooldown for so long that they had screwed up. So they were trying to recollect. I'm like, oh crap, what do we do? We're down to Sivir ulti. They knew capitalization from SKT was coming. And they were trying really hard to put the pieces back together again, but they just couldn't do it.
The worst part is too that Wolf from SKT actually zoned off 3 members of RNG by himself on Trundle support.
Yeah. And
the rest of SKT kind of just did that sweep, the kind of like a fan sweep,
Yep. No.
Clockwise. They just went around and then swept the entire team, and then they ended up
conga lined around it. It was. That Trundle support this game was nasty.
Nasty. Especially against Sivir, because Sivir doesn't have a dash. Yep. So once she gets slow, that's it. She's stuck there until she walks out of it.
Pinned against every wall, caught every scrim. I just felt bad for Sivir, but that just speaks volumes for that Trundle support and why it's so good.
And the pick and ban phase, they should have picked it. That's why I'm a big fan of people picking AC with dashes, because if you get jumped on, what's your
you need an escape.
Flash being up. All right. Sadly, not sadly. Kudos to SKT winning that game. I'm glad. I'm happy for them because they're coming back to that form where I'm used to seeing SKT just dominate everybody. That about wraps it up for day 5, though. All right, for the standings for group stage at MSI. Number 1, we have RNG with 8 wins, 2 losses. Surprising here, number 2 spot right here, COG with 7 wins and 3 losses. And another surprise here, tied for 3rd place, SKT with Flash Wolves, both at 6 wins, 4 losses.
I don't know. It feels
And
like SKT lost a whole much more than they won this
yeah,
tournament. So
they shouldn't have lost that many, to be honest.
yeah.
Going on to next week though. Next week's knockout stage. It's gonna be RNG versus SKT. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yep.
And COG versus Flash Wolves. So far it feels like COG has
The
Flash Wolves
edge.
number. Yeah, I don't think they've lost to Flash Wolves yet. They might have lost in the group stage at Worlds, but I'm not sure. They so far 2-0 Flash Wolves this week. Honestly, my predictions for next week, I think I hope I don't know who to pick on SKT versus RNG, but I think I'm just going with the world reigning champions. SKT's gonna take it. They're gonna go back into their own
Really?
original form. Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
I mean,
If SKT can do some soul searching and get back to who they were last season, yes, they would take it. But if they play the way that they were playing today, there's no way. Absolutely no way. I'm going with
no.
RNG on this one. Like, RNG
Okay.
seems to have their stuff together a lot better than SKT this time around.
We'll see. Well, you're gonna owe me some RP points next week if you're on. All right, going on for that one, our COG versus Flash Wolves. I honestly think COG is just gonna take it. Honestly,
So do I.
just yeah, like you said, they have their edge, and it's just gonna be just.
Not to mention, like, they're coming off of two really great wins of
Yeah,
RNG and
and
SKT.
SKT.
Like, Flash Wolves who? Like, so I really want to give this one, like, just for once, I'm going to give NA, like, something. Yeah, like, it's going to be CLG.
I agree with you on that one. I guess that wraps it up for this week. Thanks for listening, and see you guys next time.
Bye.